And please, no matter what it is you believe, please watch this video all the way through. Please take a second and watch it because I'm really curious to see how y'all feel about the things I'm about to say. Let's have a dialogue. Let me turn this down a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I have been looking into the theory of evolution recently on both sides and just keeping an open mind about it and just listening, because I feel like in order to come to a conclusion about something or really form an opinion about something, you have to hear out both sides. So I'm not gonna go in on the theory of evolution today. I'm not going to do that. We don't need to do that. I want to talk about what the theory of evolution doesn't cover. The most important part of life for humans. Consciousness. The theory of evolution doesn't cover consciousness. The theory that is evolution could only affect physical attributes, not consciousness. Science really doesn't know much about consciousness at all. I've realized they've looked into it, they've thrown around different ideas, and they have no idea. They don't. They kind of skirt around and they break dance around consciousness, but they really don't understand it and they can't explain it to us at all. Now, I know that certain scientists have suggested the idea that consciousness is a part of the brain activity. The brain can evolve, is their point. So the consciousness just evolved with it. But if that's the case, how do we explain the many cases where people have died, been pronounced brain dead for extended periods of time? I just watched a video of this man that was dead for 20 minutes. He talked about his experience, first watching himself and looking down on his body, floating over his body, and then going to another place and it being the most peaceful thing he's ever experienced. And then God telling him, it is not yet your time. You have more to do. And sending his consciousness back to his body. Let me see if I can find his name. Hold on. His name's Scott Drummond. Now that man that was pronounced dead for 20 minutes was a Christian. There's also an atheist man who died from drinking contaminated water in 1980. His name's Brian Melvin. He wrote a book that I'm about to read. It's coming in the mail. He was a militant atheist. He was like, no, God is not real. But he died, and he spoke of an experience of similarly was laying on the floor 1 minute in pain and then was looking down at his body the next. And he wore glasses. He was nearsighted, but he realized that he didn't have his glasses on and he could see clearly across the room. And this man also talks about his experience of first meeting Jesus and Jesus saying some things to him. Long story short, his experience was different than the first man's, but I'm excited to read this book. And he came back. Jesus sent his consciousness back to his body. If it is true that the consciousness is just simply tied up in some part of the brain and is connected to the brain activity, once you're brain dead, shouldn't your consciousness die with it? Your consciousness shouldn't be acting as like a separate entity to where it leaves your body, your physical body, but then comes back to it with no cause. You've been pronounced dead at this point. Nobody's messing with you. They've put a letter on your chest. It's done. And all of a sudden you come back to your body, like what happened with the first man, with Scott. That wouldn't be possible if the consciousness is tied up in the brain itself. Once you're brain dead, your consciousness would be gone as well. But many cases have shown that that's not the case. A lot of people have been pronounced brain dead for, extended periods of time. And then their consciousness comes back to their bodies and they live out the rest of their life. So we know that consciousness is separate from our brains, our flesh and bone organs. It's something else that evolution doesn't know anything about, can't explain to you, doesn't cover. What is consciousness? Where does that come from? I know that a lot of people are going to say, well, I mean, it's the universe. Like the universe is intelligent, and it is intelligent enough to be able to create all of this, to create our Earth, to create the solar system and our galaxy and the many other galaxies and our universe and us as humans and animals and all life. What the freak? Yo. My light just turned off for no reason. What the freak? The freak was that? Back to what I was saying. I want to ask something. Just a very straightforward question. And this is just to start a dialogue about it. It's not to try and convince anybody or convert anybody or any of that. This is where I can talk about the things that mean something to me and that I'm curious about and I want to talk about. So, intelligence behind it being created. What's the main difference between giving that credit to the universe itself and giving it to the creator, God? What's the main difference? Because to me, the main difference is God holds us accountable. The universe doesn't. The universe just kind of did its thing, and then, okay, there you guys go. You live your life, and there's no real meaning to it. There's no, you came from the dirt, to the dirt you will return. When your heart stops beating and your brain goes dead, that's it. There's no consciousness. There's no anything. Intelligent design, higher power that has capabilities that we as humans do not have, to be able to create a universe, create galaxies, create our solar system, create planet Earth, create humans, create, animals and insects. That is God. It's just a lot of times people take God's name out of it and they don't want to call it God. Like, for instance, if I drew something, if I made a sketch in my sketchbook, which is somewhere around here, and then I showed it to somebody, and I was like, hey, look what I just sketched. And they were like, wow, look at this sketch. This sketch is so gifted. Look, this sketch is so talented. Look at how gifted this sketch is. It's like giving the credit of the sketch to the sketch itself as opposed to the artist that sketched it. If we just relied on the theory of evolution and say, okay, this is what gave us life, this is what put us here, we wouldn't have consciousness. It wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be different from each other. We would just look different physically. Consciousness makes us different from each other. It makes us alive. We can never say that we aren't alive, that we can't feel things. We feel love. We feel anger. We feel sadness and depression or anxiety. We feel happiness, excitement, surprise. Some of us like yellow more than purple, R&B more than pop. We like baggy clothes more than fitted clothes. We like our hair short more than we like it long. Like, we're alive. And we're all different, even twins. They could look exactly the same, identical twins on the outside. But are they the same? No. They like different foods. They like to dress in their own way. They like different genres of music or movies. One of them likes horror. One of them likes romantic comedies. They're different. They're not the same person. That's their consciousness. It takes time to handcraft us so that we are all different from each other. So that we're not, like evolution would tell us, lifeless zombies just walking around. You can't tell me that an accident did that. That takes love. It's not just our physical being, our physical attributes that make us human. That's the least important part. Consciousness. That is the most important part of life. And science cannot explain to you what it is. It's because they've closed certain doors in their mind. They're not considering every possibility, not for scientific reasons, but for personal reasons. That is why they cannot explain to you what consciousness is. And those exact doors that they've closed is where the truth lies. So with those doors closed, they're never going to find the truth. Consciousness is spiritual. We got to start asking ourselves what that means. Just some food for thought.